Hey everybody, Mark Zachary with this week's episode of A Stroke of Good Misfortunes. I always have a lot of problems saying that for some reason. It's a mouthful, but I got it out this time. And man, we have a special guest today, and this Miss Lara, as you can see on the screen, is my sister-in-law, and she has had such a positive impact on our journey. She's actually been on this journey with us since September 25th of 2021, and she is a PT in the Austin area. So she's not here locally with us, but I tell you what, she has been just like right next to us the whole time, because she was just always giving us pointers on what we should be doing. And I think when I had questions and Julie had questions on, hey, what about this? Laura was always the first one to say, yep, you need to be doing it, Mark. Do your stuff. If you don't do your stuff, you're not going to get better. So, Laura, I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for us during this crazy time. And you have just been a godsend to me and Julie. And bless your heart for all that you do. So thank you for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here and be part of your story, your ongoing story that's going to reach and bless so many people.
Well,
And it's been hard to watch and go through with you, but then the joys that come on the other side have been the rewards, the joys that we've shared. And I've gotten snippets of the first time I walked without my walker, the first time I did this, the first time, and maybe I was one of the first people you sent it to, and that really blessed me. Yeah. And I see struggles every day, and I don't see people come through them alone. And I know that your family, and I can say I'm part of that, but your family believed in you, and you didn't have another choice but just to believe in yourself. And so it's been a joy from being a family member, watching this and understanding how prayer and our faith has led you along your journey and through many trials. But I think more so I have an understanding of the deep struggles that can happen. And unless you had all of your amazing therapists alongside of you, it's easy to give up. And so going through the muck with someone is just the best feeling. I can't tell you, because it's something I do second nature. It's something that they've never experienced before in their whole life. And so little tips and little hints and a piece of equipment, or it can be as simple as that. And it is a blessing that changes the trajectory of how they take a shower, how they get in the car.
Yeah. So how did you decide, hey, this is what I want to do with my life? Because you've been doing this how many years, and where did you go to school, and kind of give us that background on what made you want to do this?
I was a gymnast for all of my elementary, junior high, and high school years. I actually did gymnastics in college for 2 years. So I had lots of physical therapy, injuries, rehab, not extreme injuries, but just the normal wear and tear on your body. And you realize that it does affect your abilities in many areas. Sitting in class when I was hurt, I broke my tailbone. I mean, it was just after another, broke my arm. And so I really believe that I had a medical bent. My grandfather was a physician and my dad is a PhD. And I just really knew I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Then I realized I wanted to be a mom and not be on call.
It's hard to be both.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's very hard to do both. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to stem off here. When I was at college at Texas Women's University, they had extremely good programs in physical, occupational, speech therapy, and dental hygiene. So all of those things interested me, but the physical therapy was really more body and biology and how things work together. So I was accepted into the program and got my bachelor's and my master's degree in 5 years. So I went year round for 5 years, and I jumped off the gymnastics in college bandwagon because that was not going to be my way I was going to pay the bills. I knew that. And so was able to have a really great job coming out of school. I graduated in 1991. So gosh, this is 32 years of doing therapy.
So Laura, you're kind of brushing over this, but you had your master's and your bachelor's, and you graduated high school even, because you're younger than you should be when you graduated from high school, right? Because she's so smart. She got like placed out of 7 or 8 grades.
No, I did skip a grade, first grade. So that's not that impressive.
So you had your master's by what age?
21.
21. So you started doing this at 21.
I had my first legal alcoholic beverage and graduated with my master's at the same time. So it's kind of funny. But, my life experiences, they really fed beautifully into it. And I got to work in Houston, of all places, off of I-10 near your house at Southwest Memorial. So that was my first job, and I was in the rehab, the acute rehab, which is, not tier down in the medical center neuro rehab, but it was strokes and hip replacements and Parkinson's. It was all of the primarily geriatric type rehabilitation. And I was there for 3 years, and I really did like that, but I started doing home health. And what I found in the home health arena, I came back to Austin, got married, and I've been doing home health now for 27 years. But in home health, you can get to the bottom of a problem that seems so simple for someone, but changes their life. Like, I can't get in my shower, or where do I put the grab bar, or how do I go upstairs because that's where my office is. And so I really have found that the fast-paced nature of an acute care hospital or a rehab, I love that. But I really like doing life with someone and doing therapy life with someone. So different than you coming to me as an outpatient and us working out for 45 minutes or an hour and then you leaving. I actually get to come to your house and you're like, this is my problem and here it is. And so I find that it's much more rewarding for me to do that. And then I'm getting to interact with family. I get to meet husbands, wives, children, caretakers. I did work in the acute care hospital, and then I worked in the rehab hospital, and those were great learning environments because you have multiple therapists feeding off of each other. You can co-treat together, and you are really able to learn the holistic approach to someone who's had an insult to their physical nature and their body. Then I think without that, I wouldn't have been as good of a home health therapist because it gave me many experiences in a very short period of time. But then once I moved to Austin and realized that I wanted some flexibility with my children, I thought that was a really neat way not to have to drive somewhere and park 8 to 5 and work in a hospital. I was able to schedule my appointments throughout the day, going from home to home. And actually, the therapy felt like it was for everyone, for the family, for the loved ones. The caregivers were there, and I could actually not simulate what is it like to get in and out of your bathtub, but we actually would do it. And we would determine where to put the grab bars and how to progress your exercises at home. So there's a lot that unless you're in someone's home, you're not able to see their struggles directly. And I think that was a blessing for me because with FaceTime and the technology we have, Julie could show me, look, here's the bathroom and what are we going to do? And let's raise the seat and let's buy this. And so I felt like I was there, even though I really wasn't there.
Yeah, you were there, walking us through, okay, how do we just the recent little setback, how do we get, over to the toilet and into the showers and things like that. And it was amazing help. And we just appreciate it. So let me ask you a question on what a lot of people don't understand the difference between PT and OT. Can you kind of explain what you do versus what OT does?
Yes. Okay. So occupational therapy is, I think they have the hardest sell because maybe speech therapy does. Physical therapy, everybody wants to do physical therapy and believes in its merit and value. They understand physically I've changed and I need help. They get that. But the part about occupational therapy, their comments are, I don't go to work anymore, or I don't have any trouble at work, or so
Yeah.
think of occupational therapy as anything you need to do to get ready to go to work. So from the time you wake up, you need to be able to go into your bathroom and brush your teeth and take a shower and get dressed. And then you go to the kitchen and then you make a sandwich and you put it in a lunchbox, and then it's all the things, preparatory things, that self-care and activities of daily living that we do on a daily basis. And then, leading up to that, you'd have to throw a load of laundry in to have clean clothes to go to work. And so occupational just means the preparatory work. And typically it involves the upper body, because
Right.
you can kind of think of occupational therapy as maybe from the waist up on a client, and then a patient from the waist down would be physical therapy. So while we both work on balance and safety, really fine motor control, which would be your rehab that you had with your hand, and returning to holding a piece of silverware or typing on a computer, those are occupational therapy tasks, as are getting dressed, tying your shoes, even though that's on the lower half of your body. But physical therapy, it's the larger muscle groups, typically from the waist down, including the core, but that are required for locomotion and ambulation and moving around.
So you'd be involved also with knee replacements and things like that.
So it could be, so when a hip replacement, a knee replacement, I mean, there's crossover. We do shoulder replacement rehab also, but typically if you've had a stroke, you're going to need all three disciplines. Now, speech therapy is another complex understanding, because even if someone can speak and speak without any difficulty, they might have difficulty swallowing. So some of the nervous damage that can happen from a stroke is with your swallowing as well as your speech, and then also your cognition. So it's the rearranging of the words on the shelf. It's the ability to go from thickened food to thin liquids, and all, there are muscles in your throat and muscles that need to be activated and enhanced along the way. So I would say speech therapy isn't just about speaking. Many of the elderly, it's really about their cognition and their safety awareness, and we're really trying to see where are they and what can we do to enhance that. So the interdisciplinary approach that we overlap, yes, but we all have our specialties. In a stroke is where a stroke victim, that is where you see it the most. When you see all three disciplines together, is that scenario.
Yeah, that was, when I was in the hospital right after, all these people are coming in and doing their deal. And I'm like, oh, what are you here for? Okay, what are you here for? Okay, now this third person that's here, what are you doing? And why can't just one of you come in here? And maybe I wasn't the nicest patient. I don't know. I tried not to be ugly during any of that time, but and hopefully I wasn't. But yeah, I didn't realize so many people were going to be involved in the recovery and the therapy. And you're right, the speech is much more than, Mark, can you talk, or putting the words back on the shelf and things like you just said. It was, Jill was my speech pathologist at TIER, And she was always coming in and she was giving me a spoonful of Topo Chico, I think is what it was, because she couldn't give me regular water. And, it progressed to Topo because apparently carbonation has some magic work on your throat muscles. And so she would just give me a little bit of time by the spoon and see if I could handle it. And she would make me do 10 straight and then 20 straight and then 30 straight. And then once I got to a certain number without basically choking to death, she would move to the next stage. And she wouldn't even let me go, take a swallow test until I passed, drinking so much out of a spoon. And I was just shocked by all this stuff that she did. When I think of a speech pathologist as someone that helps you learn how to talk again, I mean, it was crazy
Yeah.
that so much is affected by your stroke.
Well, and I was very lucky to have a daughter-in-law involved here also, Ashley. So
Yep.
my daughter-in-law is a speech therapist, and I think she can speak to it much more. But the eye rolling and I don't need that, and but speech actually is life or death. If you aspirate and liquid trickles down in your lungs, you get pneumonia and you can't recover at times and you can die. So what seems to people like that's ridiculous. Why are you making me go and exercising and all these things?
And
It's
bite your
to keep you
tongue as you
alive.
swallow. Yeah.
It's keeping you alive. And so I or allowing you to have return to normal eating so that you can feel like
Yeah.
you have a quality of life. So there's so much more than that meets the eye. But I would say that in a rehab setting, they're going to determine which therapies need to be involved and take the lead. And I know that it may not seem there's value initially, but I think letting your team, your interdisciplinary team, figure out who needs to take the lead, what's critical, what's nicety and necessity, and
Yeah.
it changes. It certainly changes, because by the time you can walk, well, now you're trying to figure out, how do I tie my shoe with one hand? I mean,
Yeah.
it changes as things.
Well, I know how you do that. You actually buy shoes that you slip into, so you don't have to tie your shoes. Because I'm still waiting to be able to do that. But you're right though on the PT and OT. I found PT was easier to deal with, and the OT it comes so slow. It takes longer, and they've tried to explain it to me, and I get it. The hand has a lot more muscles than the thigh, and so it just
Right.
takes more time for your brain to reconnect with those muscles. And so there was a frustration on the OT side, because I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing the progress that I see on my walking.
Yeah.
And so, I got to get, I probably should have listened a little bit more in regards to that. Now, I do think that my speech came back pretty quickly, or quicker than most, from what I
Oh,
understand.
yeah.
But I mean, I still, you'll hear me slur a little here, and when I get tired, I start to slur a little bit more. And when I'm cold, I just might as well not even be talking, because it's like, man, I just need to get cold, warm. And so, I still have the struggles of those things. But yeah, I think the OT is probably the most frustrating thing that I've been through.
Well, and I mean, getting out of a wheelchair and walking feels like big time. That's
Yeah,
great. I don't want this wheelchair, but then, I'd like to be able to tie my shoes. It's but they both matter so much, and
Yeah.
but you do have to work a lot harder. And I remember I have an occupational therapist friend here in Austin who was able to be of counsel and kind of taught me some things about the electrical stimulation that they were using on your arm. And
Yeah.
that was great because we had her as a resource and was able to say, now at home, we're going to be using the stimulator on my arm to try to elicit the contractions and teach my muscles what I want them to be able to do. So
Yeah.
there are lots of, I guess I would say, layers of your therapy. And it's not just going in and doing it in the outpatient setting. There's homework, and it absorbs your entire life when you've had
Yeah.
a massive stroke. And
Right.
I can understand the waxing and waning of your excitement with it and the
Yeah.
frustration that comes with it.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed, and maybe it's common or maybe it's not, but I feel like I will work and work and work, and then there's no progress, and then all of a sudden there's a pretty good amount of progress, and you have another lull, and then boom, there's some more, and then so it's like you're teaching your brain to do this, and it finally gets it, and it starts doing it. Is that common or?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. And I think especially with the neurologic insult, you're flooding that pathway, what you're trying to change, what you're trying to improve. You flood it so many times that it reroutes the signal. And then all of a sudden you have a highway again where you had a bunch of right-hand turns that weren't connected. And so I
Yeah.
think that's it, but it's just small. It's small. It's small. And I think that, I've found with physical therapy that if you really want walking to get better, you can do leg exercises and riding a bike and these things, but you actually have to practice walking because that is putting the coordination, the balance, the strength together to do a task. Same thing
Yeah.
with your hands. You might be doing 20 repetitions of X and Y and Z, but eventually your hand held your cup. So I guess that's it, you have to build each piece individually, but then when they converge, that's when you see the
Yeah.
next change functionally. The outcomes change where you can
Yeah.
see it.
One thing that I've been impressed with on all fronts is the machinery that you have at the hospitals and things that you're like, man, how did somebody come up with that? Yet PT and OT has this ability to say, okay, you're not going to have that machine at your house, so here's what we're going to do in place of that machine, which basically does the same exact thing, but you guys do an unbelievable job in using just day-to-day things that you have around the house to take the place of those multi-million-dollar machines that are in the hospital. It's
It,
amazing to me. And
it is true. And especially, I think most therapists will tell you, these are my tools right here. Here they are, my hands. And so as long as I can provide resistance, guidance, help you use what you do have together to change and make it something different, it's amazing. I mean, I saw them when you were on your first on the sling walking. You had
oh
4
yeah,
around you, one leg, the other leg, one. I mean, people were, and the thing is when therapists get together like that, our brains work the same, and we don't even have to tell each other what we know, what is going to our job. And so that the intense rehab situations are some of my favorite, just because that is what you get is you someone can read your mind. But then when I'm in home at a home with someone, I have to actually start over and not assume that they understand. The wife may not know X or Y, and so
yeah,
there's so much education that goes to the family in the home setting once you're discharged, because actually then they kind of, I think Julie could be a resident physical therapist. She knows.
yeah.
She,
She
she
knows a lot now.
Yeah, and she understands how to set you up to succeed, or to how if she turns the wheelchair this way, you will be less less successful. I think so. I just think it's by osmosis and by time. And you guys have
Yeah.
had 16 months, and that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to never have to think about this again. But
I hope I never have to get back in that wheelchair again. You know, we've about the setback, and that it happens. And I had to get back in for about 2 weeks. But anytime you don't have the ability to get out of the bed and go to the restroom by yourself, or go get a Coke or anything like, it's so frustrating. So
now I think we could translate that into our toddlers, right? Think about a toddler and they're on the ground and they're just, it's because they don't have control over whatever it is, or their bodies, or they can't do X or Y or Z. And I think that is what I see a lot, is that frustration is just, the desires can't be met easily. And it's,
so that's got to be, the one of the worst parts of your job is people getting frustrated and quitting. I mean, it seems like if I didn't have to go every day, I go four days a week right now. If I didn't have to go somewhere and have those PTs and OTs pushing me to do that stuff, I don't know if I would do the same thing at home. And so, because when I'm home, I don't do it. And so I'm thankful that I have a place to go, because you got people that are pushing you and encouraging you. And I've told everybody that I've met along this road that you guys have this special ability to be very encouraging and yet very demanding and challenging at the same time, but doing it in a loving manner. I mean, everybody that I've met, they're like, Mark, get up. We're not going to sit here in the bed. We're not going to sit here in this chair. You got to get up, or you're never going to get better. And your brain will figure out a new way to do it if you don't teach it to do what it used to do. But y'all do that. It's such a way of, I don't know. It's a gift. You guys have a gift.
Well, I've definitely known therapists who don't have as much patience, and I think people have to be given the time to see it once or twice actually come to fruition. When I say, we're going to do this, and you don't believe me, but we do, and then that's where the trust is built, and then you can actually understand that you don't understand how the body's knit together from the inside out, but I do, and I know that God gave us a miraculous vessel that we can learn and change and adapt. But I think I had to have a really hard conversation with a woman today, as a matter of fact, and she can't see, she's having a really hard time, and she just doesn't want to do it. And I said it I stayed with her for a while, but then I just said, when I'm with you, it doesn't help me if you do it or don't do it. It doesn't, I'm going to get paid. I mean, it's not that. It's that I want to help you. And so sometimes you have to help them understand it's not your own agenda, because I think that is when you're a patient and you're the victim, or whatever you feel like you are at that moment, when you think it's someone else's agenda and they don't understand what you're going through and they don't know how to come alongside of you, that is an impasse. And most of the time, you might lose somebody and they'll just be like, I am giving up. So even family dynamics, that's easier to give up. Like for you to say, no, Julie, I'm not doing that. But I mean, different when it's just different. It's really different when someone helps you understand that you're going to go through the muck with them, and you're going to come out better, and you're going to do it with them. I'm not going to watch you do it. We are going to do it together.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
Is there a certain patient you enjoy working with more, like a sports injury or a stroke or a hip replacement, or is there anything that you think, man, this is my niche?
Well, I do have a lot of Parkinson's patients, and
Okay.
mostly, yeah. So I do have a big geriatric population. So Parkinson's is becoming so much more prevalent, and it really is debilitating. It is where it won't progress quickly like Lou Gehrig's probably, or something, ALS, anything like that. But it has multi-organ system type things. It's cognition, it's incontinence, it's walking, it's so multifaceted, and it's very interesting to work with someone, and you work through problem A, and then there's a problem B right on its heels. And so it's actually a moving target with what you're working on. Now, orthopedic things like a hip replacement or a knee or shoulder replacement or hip fracture, those are really fun because you know the progress is anticipated, expected, and almost always happens. Yeah. And so you have to be okay with sometimes the gains are very small in some of those more challenging diagnoses, like a stroke or you know a chronic progressive disease like Parkinson's or So I really believe that I tell my husband I love old people, and I do. I really do. I think that they're so wise, and they're past the stage of I'm not trying to impress anyone, and they're like, keep me out of the nursing home at all costs. I will do whatever it takes. Tell me what to do. So that's the attitude that I appreciate so much. I think when we're 30, 40, 50, 60, maybe it's still I can do it, or I can live with this, or but I think once you reach that threshold right before you realize that you're going to lose your independence and your home and everything you've had, that right there is it's very powerful. And I think it's the most powerful motivator that I see is that they'll just about do anything. The home programs, like they got a back injury and they're 30 years old, and they're probably not going to go home and do their exercises or not be a weekend warrior. But I think that for the most part, the geriatric population, when they understand how they can do it and have someone helping them along the way and teaching the family, it's so successful. And then they're like, I averted having to go to the nursing home, or, so I feel that pediatrics is something I've never done, but I could see that a special gift in someone who does pediatrics is that the body is really made to repair itself. And so your body's done some repairing of itself with some help, but a little baby, it almost happens like twice as fast. It's just there's cells regenerating and growing and changing. And so I think there's a lot of rewarding progress that you see in pediatric type therapy also. I think because the body wants to spontaneously recover. It wants to, but with the insult you had, it would not have spontaneously recovered. And that's really the definition of physical therapy is without skilled intervention, it's not likely that you would spontaneously recover. And so that's how we justify it to insurance and to things. It's like, if Julie did your therapy, would you be where you are today? Well, it required the skill of therapists. That's the thing. She's an adjunct, and she's helping on Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, but it's not the same as having someone know what's next and how to guide you. And so we do have to go to bat with the insurance. We have to tell them, and I know your therapist did that for you, and they still are an outpatient. I mean, it's still very critical for us to be striving to get to prior level of function. And that is, we just don't want you to be okay. I mean, that's not where you started. And so I hope that you, but your hard work is helping make it easier for them to keep going to bat for you with the insurance and for more therapy. And so that's a big one.
I mean, just any little improvement, they're making note of that in the charts, and then that's what they relay to the insurance company. Hey, he went from, 5 degrees to 10 degrees or 15 degrees, whatever. It doesn't really matter. as long, I guess it matters, but what I see, it doesn't matter as long as you're making progress. But when you stop making progress, that's when the insurance, and maybe this is a whole nother conversation, but it seems like that's when the insurance says, okay, that's it, no more. And you can do the rest of this on your own at home if you're gonna, you know, not progress at the PT office and things like that. So, what do you think what do you think the most important thing is in your recovery? Is it your mindset? Is it your physical determination to get up and get it going again? Or what do you think is the most important thing that you can do as you enter into rehab of any kind? Parkinson's, stroke.
I think having a really, really solid medical team in your corner with your physicians, and actually, whether it's the combining of the medications you're on, the therapy they've ordered. I mean, you've really got to have someone at the reins of all that, driving that. But then
Right.
once you have your team underneath, your therapist, I think what we appreciate the most is the mindset and the actual knowing that it doesn't be us if you do or don't do it. I mean, we need it to come from deep within. That's a desire in your heart that you want to do it, or mind, heart or mind. But I think also you have to understand that you're putting your body through some really tough stuff, and you do need to eat well, and it's like no gas in your tank. And so that may help someone understand why is speech therapy important. Well, so that you can eat again, and you're not eating through a
Yeah.
tube and drinking liquid through a tube in your nose or your stomach. That's
Yeah.
not it. That doesn't lend itself to protein and all the things. So I think having even nutrition's a pretty important aspect of it. And I think
Yeah.
some of my elderly people, that's what they don't have, is they kind of, their appetite goes off, and then they just don't have a lot of energy, fuel to, and you're asking them to do work, and it's burning all of that. So they do need to
Right.
eat properly. So when I see them and they're in an assisted living and they have 3 meals a day, and so that could be a real help, is knowing that there's a family member or someone who's going to help with the nutritional aspect of it and providing that, because I think that helps all the
Yeah, I
parts.
mean, it's crazy how it just all is tied together and is all so important. I remember having the feeding tube because they would put, feed me that way, and they'd give me liquid through the feeding tube as well because I was choking and drowning myself just from my saliva. And they said, we can't even give you a sip of water. And my mouth was so dry. I remember just begging somebody to give me something to put in my mouth because it was so dry, but they wouldn't do it because it would go straight down into my lungs.
And take the bacteria in your mouth down there at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really is amazing how all of these therapists tie in, and you have a team of doctors that they would come in, once a day and check on you usually after your therapist sessions. And it's like, man, you guys really are working as an unbelievable team of physicians and therapists. And I mean, it was and still is an amazing process.
So I do miss that. I miss being in a rehab facility where we all share in the triumphs as a collective group. I miss that because I have my own little triumphs with people, but I think there's something really special about that. And the people that I on your therapy team that I got to meet at your party, just that's, if you're not a people person and you don't love people, it's going to be real hard to be a therapist.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to come alongside you if you're just like 1, 2, 10 reps, 20 reps. It's not engaging. It's not helping them to get through the tough times unless can be like distracting and charming. And you have to. So I think if you have anyone, young adult, that thinks that they really could enjoy physical therapy or any of the therapies, I think it's rough now because you do have to have your doctorate in therapy. I was the last candidate through with the bachelor's and the master's, and now you have to have a doctorate in physical
Oh,
therapy.
really?
So what happens is that the kids get out of high school and they're going to have 7 years ahead of them, like Katie. And so you can almost go and be a PA, or, you know, like one more year and you could be a nurse anesthetist. And, you know, it just, there, you really need to start thinking, because we've kept ourselves, I would say, a hot commodity, because we're not just flooding the market with therapists. But there's a special person. It's just, to me, it makes me sad, because I was able to go, oh, that's a fun thing, I'm going to go do that. And I've had a great life with it and being grandfathered in. But I think the debt, I mean, I know that when you go to get your doctorate in physical therapy after a bachelor's degree and you go get your doctorate another 3 years, you come out with $100,000 worth of debt. And but I just would never deter anyone from wanting to try to do that. I think that there's a path where you can actually be a physical therapy assistant or an occupational therapy assistant. And I have many of them that I work with now. And then while working as an assistant, which is not more than half of our salary. It's not like it's like a caregiver or something. It's a good living. You can do well, but then they can go back to physical therapy school and then become, you know, a doctorate in physical therapy. So it's just, it's very different. I just, old school, and I feel lucky that I didn't have to, but, you know, I would consider having if there are high schools that have the programs and ancillary services where they can actually go into the rehabs. I think there's a lot that are coming where the kids can actually go and spend, you know, one afternoon, twice a week, an off period in high school, and go and actually be with a therapist. And so to me, that's exactly how you know that you're willing to go the extra 7 whatever years for it. But I want to tell you, like, I think we have had some fun too with your mobility. And I remember that first I want to say, I admire you so much, because you reached out to us and to others. I had to write it down, but my daughter graduated from A&M a month after your stroke. And she had her ring dunk, a month after, and you reached out and you were being supportive of something when you were going through the hardest time in your life. And then I also wrote down that we had a high school friend who passed away, and you were worried and concerned and praying for her. I remember the many times you come out with your mobility issues to watch my daughter Gracie play soccer. So
love watching Gracie.
But we've had some fun with that, because I want to tell you, the first time you came, it was in a wheelchair and it wasn't raining, and by mid-game it was pouring, and we got you stuck. And so
here we go. Yeah, that's the first time I thought we needed a four-wheel drive wheelchair. That was
that was humiliating. If anybody would have told me I was going to get my brother-in-law stuck in the mud in a wheelchair, and knowing better, I mean, it was dry when we drove across the grass to get where we were watching, but the rains came, and then 4 kind gentlemen picked up your wheelchair and took you back to the parking lot. And you were
literally picked my wheelchair up and carried it across. That was so fun.
And you know what? I have to tell you, my heart sank, because I thought, he'll never do that again. He's just like, that wasn't worth it. That was a disaster. Well, it was about a month or later, and 2 months, and you were on a cane, and you walked the game we had you come to. You had to walk entirely around the track from one side to the other to where the stands were, and you walked half of a football field track to sit down and watch Gracie, and that was challenging. And now the last game that you've come to, I arrive and I think I'm going to meet Mark in the parking lot. We're going to go in together. And you're already in the stands waiting on me. So you got up the stands, up the bleachers. So I just need you to understand that that is doing life. That's like figuring out what am I going to do with what I've got and still live and love on the people around me and have a meaningful, engage meaningfully with people. And you did it all through this. And you're praising us for how we were there for you, but you know what? I think if anybody can't see how hard your journey was, but you persevered in so many ways. It wasn't just your physical nature. It was, how am I gonna keep living? And you've got a grandbaby coming, and
Yeah, no, that's, yeah,
it's gonna keep getting better. It is.
yeah. It's hard work, no doubt about it. But when you have a good family behind you, a strong family, and you've got so many things that you enjoy doing with the family, it makes you work even harder. And I told my therapist right now, I said, okay, I've got a grandbaby coming in May. Now I've got new motivation to get this going. So make me cry, bend my arm as far as you can bend my arm, because I've got to get this working again, because I want to coach my grandson in
Right.
soccer, in softball, whatever, baseball, whatever he does. I want to be around to coach him in that. And I want to be able to go to Gracie's soccer events and Kendall's wedding with no problems and things like that. So it's easy to stay motivated when you focus on what you're motivated for versus, man, my arm is only moving 5 degrees more this month than it was last month. So anyway, thank you. That was very, very kind.
Well, it's I just want everyone to understand that when you're with a loved one who's having a hard time, if you can step way back and see where you've come, and not in a patronizing kind of, well, look what you've done. I mean, I think it's important just to remind gently, because it's tough. The emotional journey with this is really tough. But
Yeah.
I just started thinking back to all of that, and that you were willing, as a 50-year-old male, to come to Gracie's game in a wheelchair. Okay, that's a hurdle in itself. You're looking around at all the other people that are 50 years old and they're not in wheelchairs. So I'm just saying, to me, that melted my heart and made me just think, okay, well, I certainly hope that someone can listen to these podcasts and just understand that everyone's going to have different struggles and different things with, whether it's your pride or your anger or all the things, but find what it is that motivates you and let that do that job and then help you along.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll wrap this up. We're at 15 minutes almost. And the thing, when this first happened, Julie was taking a bunch of pictures, and I didn't want her to take any pictures. I said, I don't want pictures of this. I don't want videos of this. But I think that was one of the best things she did. And she took a lot of pictures without me even knowing it. But now that you look back and you can see, oh my gosh, that I really have come a long way from just being able to lift my right leg at all to being able to walk. So if you ever have to go through this, if anybody is watching this and you're going through this, take pictures along the way, whether the person going through this doesn't want them or not. Take them, because you can always look back so you can compare to where you were versus where you are today and see how far you've come in a short period of time. So anyway.
And I would say, to piggyback on that, just trust your therapist, because you're not the first person, and they have done this before. And although it seems like they're small, they're tiny, it's a little tiny person, and I'm big and I could fall. I mean, you just have to trust. You just have to trust that when Kent told you, no, we're going to walk, get up, this is a railing, you hold it, and we're going to walk in this hallway.
Right.
I just mean he knew you could do it. I would never set someone up to fail. Let's stand up so I can drop you. So
Yeah.
just trust your therapist, because
Yeah.
we've been through challenges and been crafty and figured things out, and we have a lot of history, that's helping us to
Yeah.
with your progress in your therapy. So I think, but trusting is hard.
Trust and do what they say. I
Right.
think that was one of the things you kept telling me, do what they say and do it on a regular basis, or, it may not turn out well for you. So trust and obey what they're telling you to do.
Yeah, I like it. Well, maybe if
So,
you can, I know Julie has a sweet little video of us getting stuck in the mud. Maybe somehow you can get a picture of that and put it on the front of this podcast, and let that be here's where we've come from.
that's great. Well, I will do that. Laura, thank you so much for spending an hour of your night when you could have been with your family, but I know you work all day, and this is probably the last thing you wanted to do, but I can't thank you enough for being on here and sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and it's been very helpful, and hopefully it'll be helpful to somebody down the road as well. So thank you for doing that, and we can't wait to see you again. I love you too, and we'll see you before long.
Yeah, we will.
All right,
See
Laura.
you in
Yeah,
the soccer game pretty soon.
I'll be at the next one.
That's right. Okay, love you.
All right. Thanks. Love you. Bye-bye.